spend 4 months a year in Cape Town, where even though I'm in Cape Town, my house is 12,000 square feet. I have a steam room, sauna, I have a full home CrossFit gym, 2 security guards on rotation. I have a full-time chef who cooks me 3 meals a day. I have tried my best in Cape Town to spend more than $30,000 a month. I can't. I physically, I go to every single restaurant. I try to look for the most expensive bottle of wine. I've never been able to find anything more than $100. Right?
Really?
Cape Town is so cheap, man. It's insane.
So here's something interesting. Millennial Cape Townians are under siege. They're under siege from global travelers who are called digital nomads. I'm sure you've started to hear a lot about this, but this lovely bunch of travelers are basically long-term tourists that stay for 90 plus days to 36 months as per new regulations. They come from wealthier Western nations and even Australians. I've bumped into a few up and down Cape Town. Now, visitors coming to South Africa should be a good thing, right? They're bringing foreign currencies. They're here to stay in Cape Town and South Africa. This should be a good thing. Well, not so much. See, the thing is that there's a knock-on effect to digital nomads being here in Cape Town. And it's good for some businesses and industries that cater to them, but not so much for the native Cape Townians or people from whichever global south city that they choose to bless and or burden. So in this video, I'm going to try and break down the numbers, the political and socio-economic factors that are actually fueling the digital nomad situation in Cape Town and in many other currency arbitrage cities around the world. Cities that offer great 5-star lifestyle for a 3-star budget. But let me make this clear. That's a 3-star budget by Western standards, not South African.
Akuthethi wena sana lam, thethi poverty.
And to top it all off, I'm going to introduce you to what I call the Cape Town Property Industrial Complex. It's very similar to like the US Military Industrial Complex, but it has less explosions. Well, somewhat. I'll explain a little bit later. Now, the implementation of the South African government's remote work visa was actually introduced by Home Affairs in May of 2024, just before the elections. And it came after heavy lobbying from the Western Cape government and its tourism partners, circa 2021. Now, with this new visa, it's going to allow digital nomads to stay in South Africa for up to 3 years. Crucially, if they're spending more than 6 months here within that year, they actually need to register with SARS to pay tax. But they found a way around this, something that's called a visa run, where they basically leave the country just before the visa period expires. They go for like a 2-week plus off cool-off period, and then they come back, reapply, then voila, no tax obligation, because they technically weren't here. Now, Cape Town has always been unaffordable. Let's get that one just out the way. I've been coming here on my own dime since the early 2010s. Now, also remember, you can't actually count that you went to a city if your parents were paying, unless it was your zaddy, not your daddy. A crucial date is October of 2024. This is when South Africa's nomad visa was formally gazetted and celebrated across the entire tourism industry for its expected impact on the local economy. But also on the flip side, Cape Town locals are now more than ever, slowly but surely becoming increasingly vocal about the visitors that are driving up prices, competition for housing, and many other resources in the city. What I realized when I was doing the story is that if you can't measure something, how will you know how bad it is or how good is it? So the thing is that it's actually unclear how many official remote working visas have been granted in South Africa since their introduction. A spokesperson from Home Affairs Minister Leon Schreiber's office did not respond to queries about the data availability when he was asked about it at the end of last year. Now let's get back to that rather braggadocious young man in the beginning of the video. Now Iman Gadzi is a British-Russian entrepreneur, social media influencer, and apparently a founder of several online education and marketing companies that have made him a lot of money clearly. He actually embodies a lot of the new wave of negatively perceived digital nomads who are taking advantage of the now very much open world, and sometimes they skirt the rules a bit. They skirt them to be able to live wherever, however. Now Gadzi, on top of living a really crazy life, excessively promotes location independence, and he also promotes the digital nomad lifestyle, which aligns with Cape Town's reputation and also the city's recent push to become more of a hub for these type of remote workers. In fact, there was a supposed secret social media campaign that was laced with influencers that happened in December. It might have been one, it might not have been one. Don't quote me on that, it's alleged. There was just a crazy amount of influencer type creators who all of a sudden packed their bags and came here to Cape Town, from people like Ayame to even Rick Ross. They were here, and the latter even gave a video-like testimonial about how amazing Cape Town is, and everyone should come here in 2025. Yikes, they clearly found us.
Out here in the most beautiful place in the world. Make sure, I want to reiterate this, make sure Cape Town is #1 on your places to 2025.
Thing is, these two come from key visitor markets for Cape Town, the US and the UK. And in fact, according to data from Stats SA, during almost every single month last year, except for June, Cape Town International Airport welcomed a larger proportion of foreign travelers to total tourists compared to Johannesburg's OR Tambo. That's just insane, considering how many people go into OR. But there's another side to all of this. Now, if you log on to practically any social media site and you search digital nomads, South Africa, or even Cape Town, you're going to hear Cape Townians arguing about one thing in particular, that digital nomads are disrupting the local markets through the weight of their largely Western currencies. They're driving up restaurant and accommodation prices to levels that completely make it unaffordable for locals. And they actually aren't lying. Prices in Cape Town are now getting dangerously close to overseas levels, but we still have to pay in South African currencies. And I guess that's the downside of capitalism. If something is in high demand, you can literally just keep raising prices because the nomads can afford this, but who cares if the locals can't? They'll just have to see for themselves.
I cannot afford to compete against the euro and the pound and the dollar. It is so... Please go away.
But it becomes harder and harder for an average South African to afford living in Cape Town. The cost of living here is insane only because of the rent.
What is happening in Cape Town is unsustainable. That little utopia is going to combust. And granted, at this stage, it is black and brown people who cannot afford to live in the city, so no one cares. But white South Africans, you are next. I promise you. Because the rand is the rand is the rand, is not the euro, as not the dollar.
Okay, but what are some of the elected officials actually saying about all of this? According to Cape Town Mayor Jordan Hill-Lewis, the influx of digital nomads into Cape Town is not really affecting the prices of rentals within the city. Crazy, right? So blaming Airbnb is on us. We're wrong. Instead, he says that the city's slow building processes that limit the supply of affordable accommodation is actually what's driving it up. I wonder who's in charge of the city. Now, those who are pro-remote workers and digital nomads say that people should see them as like long-term tourists because they'll be staying in one of our guest houses, dining in our restaurants, working from our coffee shops, and exploring our tourist attractions. That's what they're saying. They say that this sustained economic activity is exactly what our industry needs to thrive and to create jobs. Yes and no. It's needed in the short term, but what's the long-term cost? That's what we've got to look at here. Then there's this other conversation around tourists providing 100,000 plus jobs in Cape Town already. Then I'll ask the other question, the tough question. Are those legal South African citizens? Are those Cape Townians working in those industries? Or other neighboring country migrants? I don't have an answer to that. In fact, according to your experience, let me know whenever you've been in Cape Town. Are there more foreigners employed in Cape Town's hospitality industry than South Africans, or are you seeing more South Africans actually getting that upside of employment? The larger argument here is that the income requirements of South Africa's new digital nomad visa means that these digital nomads would only be interested in elite or upmarket housing. That's what the city is saying. But I have a different view on this. See, the local government says this because the digital nomad visa program specifically targets people who earn a minimum of $35,000, which is roughly 650,000 Rand per year. It's a decent amount if you're living in South Africa and even Cape Town. But with all that said, I want to introduce you to the real cause and effect of this bubbling under crisis. There's a key player, interrelationship nature, that is fueling this entire problem around digital nomads. And I'm calling it the digital nomad industrial complex. This is a mutually beneficial relationship that the local government of Cape Town, property developers, rental brokers, hospitality industry, and Airbnb and the likes all have with each other. And they all benefit from it, just not the people. Let me explain. See, when a person from another country is looking to basically nomad here in Cape Town, they're going to need a place to stay, then a place to eat, and places to explore and enjoy themselves. This is just step one. It's really simple to understand. Now, when these people come into the market, they can well and truly afford and even outbid a hypothetical person, couple, or family who are paying 25,000 Rand a month for a 1 or a 2 bedroom apartment in Cape Town, in the City Ball, or similar areas. That Cape Townian person or couple then has to move out a little bit further, and they start to outbid someone in a 20,000 Rand per month area. This cycle continues until the one at the bottom is left with no place or the threat of a really undesirable place to stay at. By the way, 25,000 Rand rent per month in South Africa and even Cape Town is still considerably high even if you're a couple. Now, property developer A steps in. They see a trend starting to take shape here. They then either apply for a new site for development or reapply to configure a current site that was maybe a little bit more closer to being affordable for Cape Townians. They obviously make this a high return, high rental residential property block or area. This is obviously to cater to the market, and because there's no other new stock coming onto the market fast enough, they're going to get rentals and they're going to reap crazy profits. The Cape Town government then plays their part. They basically push for visas to be easier at a national level. Remember, they have the Home Affairs Minister doing the Lord's work up there for Cape Town. Through the city, the local government then fast tracks the type of high-end developments that are needed by nomads, not normal people, because they cater to the right market. The market that they lobbied to come here in the first place. Low-cost developments then take a back seat. And also developers in Cape Town, they aren't that compelled to build lower-cost affordable housing as part of their entire sort of like luxury or expensive development push for a whole host of other reasons which I can't cover in this video. Then the rents start to increase. Nomads fill up these high-end rental properties because to them it's still relatively cheap. When the nomads aren't here, those same properties are then used as short-term rental stock for Airbnbs and the likes. Stay with me now, we're almost there. Now, when you compare the average daily rental rate, short-term rentals are 271% more expensive than long-term rentals because of how much more of a premium you can actually charge on short-term rental contracts. Think things like 6 months versus 12-month contracts. Looking at the monthly returns of short-term rentals and assuming a 50% occupancy rate, only 3 of the 10 suburbs that were surveyed in Cape Town offer a higher income from long-term rentals. Therefore, home-owning Cape Townians, property developers and the likes are then incentivized to list their properties on Airbnb and similar platforms rather than listing these on long-term rental stock. This is another win for the industrial complex, more places for the nomads. Okay, let's keep going. Then we have the hospitality industry as well as restaurants. They start to get more people coming into the city that are now more foreign. These nomads can now pay more for meals and beverages. This demand then leads to increases in the general pricings. They start to charge more, but like the locals get priced out, but who cares? Then maybe you're thinking like, but wait Zim, what about taxes? Surely these businesses will have to pay more in taxes. Yes, at surface level, they will pay more in tax, but when that tax goes into the government kitty, it'll more often than not just go to service those same neighborhoods and keep them more clean and well taken care of than others. Remember, there's a whole let's look after those who pay principle in Cape Town. Can you see it now? Can you see how this industrial complex actually works? They keep winning and average Cape Townians just keep losing in the long term. But hey, these people are bringing in foreign currency. It's great for the economy, right? This whole issue is really complex, but I've tried to simplify it so that the real economic gainers and how they're all interlinked starts to make sense to everybody. I could be wrong, guys. There's actually no right or wrong in this instance. You'll have to let me know. I mean, we've all seen those long queues for Cape Town 1 and 2 bed apartment viewings. Those things are starting to look like voting lines, and it's only set to get worse for everybody involved. In fact, in my opinion, there needs to be a community activism platform that actually starts to address how Cape Town opens up new middle-class developments in the city. I don't know if this has started and if they're doing it at the scale that it's actually needed at, but let us know below. Now, the thing with bureaucracy is that politicians are able to hide easily behind it when it suits them while people are still suffering on the ground. My biggest feeling is that this problem will only start to be solved when all affected groups stand together and make government account and actually get them to change their ways. There are many developers that can come into the city to build new capacity, middle class capacity, affordable capacity. Cape Town is very attractive. It's a very attractive market. The government needs to deregulate and mandate more affordable housing almost immediately. The excuses have to end. This, I believe, will sort out many of the ills currently being experienced in the city. And their precious nomads won't be blamed for the cost of living crisis. And everyone can go back to not greeting each other in the streets like how Cape Town was always intended to be. Actually, you know what? Let me go home. But before that, thank you for watching up until this point. I hope you enjoyed this piece as much as we enjoyed to make it for you. Check out one of these other videos and hopefully they'll be just as interesting as this one. Cheers.